What's the fat ass we have to endure? Those were the precise words my daughter Jasmine hurled at her wedding, jabbing a finger right at me before her new spouse's affluent clan. The lavish city ballroom in Charlotte, North Carolina, echoed with mocking guffaws as 200 attendees gawked at me with revulsion, like I'd stumbled into the season's most refined affair by accident. My face flushed hot with embarrassment, fingers shaking as I gripped the modest present I'd packaged so thoughtfully. Yet in that instant, an event unfolded that would alter my world irrevocably. Mr. Sterling, the bridegroom's dad, a polished figure in a tailored, custom-made suit who'd been snickering with the crowd, abruptly halted, his gaze fixed on me in utter astonishment. "Hold on," he muttered, edging closer while the room's jeers persisted around us. "Aren't you actually my latest superior? I'm Eleanor Baines, though folks know me as Ellie. At 66, I've spent the past 3 decades existing like a shadow. Following my husband's fatal crash when Jasmine was just 12, I turned into that overlooked figure we all recognize, the lady who wipes down offices before sunrise, the one juggling 3 bus routes to reach her shift, the person shopping at thrift stores and pinching every cent prior to any purchase. Jasmine matured, resenting me. My lowly position, my calloused palms reeking of harsh cleaners, my battered footwear that clicked over the sleek stone floors of the high-rise firms I tended nightly. What escaped her notice, what nobody suspected, was how during those quiet scrubbing sessions I paid attention. I eavesdropped on the overtime managers, their strategies, setbacks, and monetary confidences. Over the years, I soaked up insights like parched earth after rain. From the sparse cash I scraped together, kicking off with $50 in shares I caught in an overheard discussion, followed by $100, I started trading. My basic 2-bedroom place overflowed with secondhand investing guides and business journals fished from the boss's trash. I'd pore over them post-shift each evening, vision blurry from exhaustion, yet pulse racing with resolve. As Jasmine viewed me as a broken, pitiful soul, I was covertly erecting a fortune. My stakes expanded. I snapped up real estate via shell companies. I snapped in on faltering firms that staged stunning recoveries. I turned unseen investor in ventures that soared past forecasts. Across 2 decades, I stuck to bargain outfits, basic eats, and the unassuming schedule, yet my savings ballooned to sums beyond most folks' wildest imaginings. And right then, at Jasmine's nuptials, Mr. Sterling spotted who I was. He headed the firm I'd acquired for $45,045,000, merely 2 weeks earlier. The fellow who'd inked the deal docks blind to the enigmatic purchaser, E.J. Beaumont, being the exact lady his relatives had just shamed openly. I witnessed the instant comprehension dawned in his stare, my features from virtual meetings, my mark on the agreements, my tone in phone talks. Quietude rippled outward from our spot across the venue, much like waves on still water. The visitors picked up on Mr. Sterling's look, his abrupt paling, and how he gaped at me like confronting a specter. Jasmine, who'd been giggling with pals at my exposed humiliation, sensed the dire shift. Her smug grin faded gradually as she observed her new dad-in-law approach me cautiously. "Madam," Mr. Sterling breathed, tone hushed. "Are you? Is it truly you?" His palms quivered while he fished out his cell, no doubt hunting transaction messages, exec headshots, whatever proved what his thoughts balked at believing. The individual they'd belittled, deemed a kin disgrace, was now the force dictating his business's destiny, and thus his household's wealth to come. And there I lingered. Ellie, the unseen, Ellie the fat ass, clasping my humble wrap token in budget paper, aware my existence teetered on transformation. For after years of quiet, my chance to voice truth had come at last. The dawning in Mr. Sterling's gaze unfolded like a jigsaw fitting together deliberately, frame by frame. His digits shook as he navigated his device, frantically probing the business acquisition correspondence. I caught his uneven breaths while he matched the official image of E.J. Beaumont, chief executive, against me, the lady in front of him wearing a $30 burgundy frock. "Heavens," he uttered, and that phrase sliced the celebratory vibe sharp as a blade. You're the buyer of Sterling Corporation." Jasmine hurried up, her stilettos striking the tile like mallet strikes. "What's this mean, Mr. Sterling?" she demanded in that phony, that tender tone she always adopted when she was after something. This was my mom, Eleanor, the woman I mentioned earlier, the one who mops floors in office buildings. She let out a shaky chuckle, yet her gaze flicked anxiously from her father-in-law to me, piecing together the unfolding scene. My pulse thundered in my chest, so fiercely I swore the whole room could pick up on it. For 2 decades, I'd shielded this hidden truth like a priceless artifact. Each evening, after wiping down corporate suites, I'd settle at my modest secondhand table and orchestrate deals worth millions. I carried 3 devices, one for personal chats that Jasmine was aware of, another dedicated to key professional exchanges, and a third reserved strictly for clandestine maneuvers. I'd woven an intricate web of dummy firms, overseas holdings, and business pseudonyms so elaborate that even top-tier financial sleuths couldn't unravel it. Mr. Sterling's firm had been bleeding cash for months, a staggering $3 million shortfall, or $3,000 in the hole, plagued by worker disputes and violated agreements. When my attorneys floated the chance to acquire it, I glimpsed beyond the glaring deficits in the ledger. I envisioned years of dedicated labor, steadfast staff who shouldn't face unemployment due to one man's bungled choices, no matter how noble his aims. I shelled out $45 million not for the enterprise itself, but to preserve livelihoods for the households relying on those positions. "Mr. Sterling, you're frightening me," Jasmine pressed, though the bold assurance in her tone had evaporated. "What does my mom have to do with your business?" Devin, her recent spouse, stepped closer, fidgeting with his necktie in unease. He cut a striking figure, just 32, raised in ease but lacking his wife's spite. He'd come by his dad's compassion, yet missed the savvy to spot unspoken cues. Mr. Sterling locked eyes with me, and right then admiration replaced the disdain I'd seen earlier. "Miss Beaumont," he pronounced, invoking my executive alias with a gravity that made surrounding attendees swivel their necks. "I'd like to express my deepest gratitude for rescuing my family's enterprise. Had you not stepped in, scores of workers would be jobless by now." The hush that ensued hung thick, almost tangible, sharp enough to slice through. Jasmine froze in place, her lips parted as she absorbed her father-in-law's declaration. "Miss Beaumont," she echoed deliberately. "My mother goes by Baines." Her pitch climbed, pulling in additional partygoers who clustered unwittingly, encircling our group. I remained silent still. Over the years, I'd mastered the skill of quietude, of fading into the background, allowing assumptions to bloom unchecked. Yet in this instant, each quiet beat eroded the flawless image Jasmine had crafted for her nuptials like corrosive drops. I watched her thoughts race wildly, recalling every instance she'd ridiculed my supposed destitution, every fib she'd spun to pals about my role, every occasion she'd acted as if I were non-existent. "Mom," she murmured at last, the term feeling alien after her recent public shaming. "Is Mr. Sterling telling the truth?" Her gaze gleamed with a blend of bewilderment, optimism, and a riskier glint, avarice. I sensed her calculating feverishly, pondering the implications for her own wealth ahead. The crowd buzzed softly, a drone akin to agitated insects. Snippets of talk drifted over. "She's worth millions, Jasmine's mom. Can't be... Didn't she always seem broke?" The twist was savagely sweet and sharp. The very folks who'd mocked me not long before now eyed me with intrigued deference. Some feigned. Mr. Sterling offered his hand, a stark shift from the degradation he'd just observed. "Let me properly present you to my kin," he intoned gravely. "This is Eleanor Baines, the tycoon who recently bailed out my firm and secured 600 livelihoods." It was my turn at last. After years cloaked in business fronts and proxy advocates, after enduring my daughter's dismissal as worthless, the opportunity to voice myself had arrived. But as I parted my lips, the response Jasmine anticipated didn't emerge. "Mr. Sterling," I replied gently yet firmly, "your sentiments mean much, but I think there's been a mix-up." The optimism in Jasmine's stare shifted to ease, assuming I'd refute it all. "I didn't acquire your firm seeking acclaim or appreciation. It was simply the ethical path." I halted, fixing my sight on my child, a lesson drawn from witnessing endless, avoidable hardship around us. Jasmine's eyes widened in perplexity. I'd neither affirmed nor rejected the purchase, but I'd sown uncertainty destined to haunt her. I could tell her thoughts wrestled amid solace and distrust, poised between amid the embarrassment of having embarrassed me and the alluring chance that it all might be real. And I, Ellie the Overlooked, grinned for the initial time that evening, realizing the intrigue was only starting. The kernel of uncertainty blossomed like flames in Jasmine's gaze. In the days following the ceremony, she kept phoning me relentlessly. At first, there were affectionate texts pretending to show motherly worry. "Mom, are you all right? You appeared quite anxious during my nuptials." Then followed the straightforward inquiries. "Had you met Mr. Sterling prior?" And at last, the pleading. "Please, I require honesty about whatever Mr. Sterling mentioned." I stuck to my daily habits as though nothing unusual had occurred. Each dawn at 5 I rose in my modest blue-collar two-room flat. I had black coffee paired with toast for my morning meal. I donned my janitorial outfit and boarded the trio of buses transporting me to the structures where I toiled. Yet what Jasmine remained unaware of was that amid those commutes on my work-issued device, I was overseeing a $200 million, $200,000 venture spread via stakes across the landmass. On Tuesday evening, Jasmine appeared at my doorstep without warning. I caught the sound of her struggling with the aged latch on the entrance to the building, muttering oaths quietly. Once she reached my threshold, she sported a cream-colored cashmere wrap worth more than half a year's lease here. Her designer Italian footwear seemed mismatched in the frayed linoleum corridor and surfaces crying out for fresh coats of color. "Mom, we must discuss this," she declared, perching on my second-hand couch and surveying the space with her usual expression of revulsion. "I can't quit dwelling on the incident from my wedding. Mr. Sterling acted oddly toward you, as if he held you in peculiar esteem." I served myself some tea and settled opposite her in my cherished seat, the one I'd salvaged from the roadside 15 years back and covered anew with bargain material. "Your ceremony was lovely, Jasmine. Devin strikes me as a decent fellow." My tone stayed steady, though inwardly a tempest of feelings raged. This marked the first occasion in years that my girl had visited my home on her own accord, driven solely by her hunch that I possessed wealth. "Stop diverting," she exploded, leaping from the couch like a coiled mechanism. "Mr. Sterling claimed your Beaumont. He stated you acquired his firm for millions of dollars. Is that accurate or false?" Her tone broke on the final syllable, exposing the anguish she'd harbored for days. I savored a mouthful of tea, sensing the heat trickle into my chest. "Jasmine, observe me," I murmured gently. "Do you truly think that I, who mops restrooms for income, who shops at bargain outlets, who resides in this cramped space, could be a tycoon?" I rose and extended my palms toward her, displaying the calloused skin and trimmed, unadorned nails. These fingers have polished countless surfaces. Do they resemble those of an executive? But I detected a perilous glint in her stare, an ember of distrust that wouldn't fade without effort. "So clarify why Mr. Sterling addressed you as Ms. Beaumont. Clarify why he regarded you like someone of significance." It was the moment to deliver Jasmine precisely the fuel for her self-inflicted torment. Maybe, I uttered deliberately, Mr. Sterling mistook me for another person. Or perhaps, I hesitated for effect, there was a mark on my features that evoked a figure from his professional history. Gentlemen of his generation occasionally spot phantoms in the void. It held a kernel of truth, yet not the full account. And Jasmine, with her suspicious temperament and soul brimming with avarice, populated the voids with her darkest anxieties and brightest aspirations. I observed her pondering, theorizing, and envisioning. But suppose he wasn't mistaken? She whispered, mostly to herself, suppose you truly possess funds concealed someplace. During the ensuing days, Jasmine turned into a novice sleuth. She began arriving without notice at odd times, stealthily inspecting my flat when she believed I wasn't watching. One evening, I discovered her rifling through my workstation as I fixed supper. I was merely hunting for a writing tool, she fibbed, but I recognized she'd been examining my files. What she ignored was that my vital records sat in a secure vault at the elite financial institution downtown. My residence held only the basics it seemed to offer: service invoices, shopping slips, outdated periodicals, and borrowed volumes from the public collection. However, I'd intentionally planted misleading hints. A financial slip showing a $300 deposit, $300 that appeared tampered with, a jotted contact that linked to a local pizzeria, yet might pass as businesslike without a check. Come Friday, Jasmine brought Devin along. It was the debut visit by my daughter's husband to my place, and I noted the unease in his expression as he sought a spot to perch without appearing impolite. He proved a truly compassionate youth, nurtured in plenty, but lacking his spouse's harshness. Miss Baines, Devin remarked with the polished manners instilled in him from youth. Jasmine has shared the mix-up from our wedding. My father has been V. She's been on edge ever since. He keeps claiming that you seem oddly familiar to him, like in a work-related sense. Jasmine perched on the arm of my couch, her gaze darting about the space as though hunting for concealed clues. Devin believes it's time to sort out this mix-up, she mentioned, yet her delivery hinted she had zero interest in resolving it. She was eager to validate her doubts instead. What sort of resolution are we talking about? I replied, maintaining a steady tone. Internally, though, I sensed I was locked in a high-stakes chess match with a pro. Each step I took aimed to steer things exactly as I desired. Devin coughed lightly. My dad noted that the firm got acquired by a lady called E.J. Beaumont. We figured perhaps you might be acquainted with her. Or maybe he paused, visibly uneasy about where the talk was heading. Perhaps there's a relative tie we didn't know about. Jasmine edged closer, her stare gleaming with eagerness. This was the instant she'd anticipated, the query she'd been crafting over days. But my response only deepened her bewilderment. Baines is an extremely ordinary surname, I stated plainly. Still, if Mr. Sterling truly wishes to encounter the individual who purchased his business, he can surely reach out to his attorneys to set up an encounter. I offered a faint smile, even if I can't fathom why he'd bothered to express personal gratitude for a mere deal. Jasmine practically sprang from the couch, since she preserved hundreds of positions because she shelled out above the company's value because it stemmed from kindness, not merely commerce. Her outburst exposed that she'd been digging independently, probably grilling Devin for insights into his kin's finances, and there it was, the admission that she grasped far more than she'd let on. Jasmine had been piecing together the mystery bit by bit. She just required my affirmation to seal the full image, but I wasn't about to hand it over that readily. Rather, I settled into my worn armchair, nursing my budget brew, regarding my daughter with the calm demeanor of someone harboring no secrets. And for the first occasion since the ceremony, I caught real alarm in her gaze. Alarm at possibly erring, yet also alarm at possibly hitting the mark. That alarm in Jasmine's eyes morphed into outright fixation. In the ensuing weeks, her drop-ins grew more regular and more intrusive. She showed up at odd times, occasionally with Devin in tow, other times solo, Forever armed with fresh inquiries she tried to pass off as offhand, though I recognized she'd scripted them meticulously. Mom, ever considered relocating to somewhere nicer? Wouldn't a vehicle beat relying on public transit? Her eyes swept the flat like a scanner, probing for discrepancies from the hardship she'd always pictured. One Wednesday evening, heading back from my shift, I spotted her huddled on the stoop outside. She'd lingered there for 3 hours amid the chilly downpour, her upscale jacket drenched and her cosmetics running. "I require the facts," she uttered, her voice cracking as I neared. Devin's beginning to view me as unhinged. His relatives eye me oddly, but I sense something's off, Mom. It's deep in my gut. I guided her inside to my place and brewed her a steaming mug while she shivered on the divan. For the first time in ages, I witnessed true fragility in Jasmine, not the scheming tactics she typically wielded. "Share your thoughts," I suggested, positioning myself opposite her, just as I'd done countless times during her childhood frights from bad dreams. "I've been probing," she admitted, staring at her shaky fingers clutching the mug. I brought on a private eye to uncover details about E.J. Beaumont. My pulse raced momentarily, yet I held my face impassive. "And what turned up?" I inquired, actually intrigued. I'd invested millions across the years to ensure my business persona stayed utterly detached from my private world. "Zero," Jasmine murmured, her irritation evident. "Beaumont's like a phantom. She owns firms in 12 various nations, yet she skips public snapshots, avoids press chats, dodges galas. Her legal team manages it all via proxies. The sleuth mentioned in his 30-year run he'd never encountered such meticulous guarding of one's seclusion." I tilted in, pretending engagement. "And that fuels your doubts about me." Jasmine glanced up, her eyes puffy from tears. "Mom, you scrubbed those executive suites after dark. You were present during late nights for the bosses, amid their key phone sessions with papers scattered on tables. Didn't you ever pick up intel that might have served you? It was a clever probe, nearer to reality than she realized." "Jasmine," I murmured gently, "if I'd gleaned business intel from janitorial work, wouldn't I have elevated our circumstances ages back? Wouldn't we have thrived more during your youth?" But she shook her head fiercely. "Perhaps you chose to stay under the radar. Perhaps it felt wiser to stay in poverty on the surface while quietly building up wealth in secret." Her words grew louder, laced with a frantic urgency that tugged at my emotions. "Mr. Sterling keeps inquiring about your whereabouts. He mentions that your features seem recognizable from key video meetings. Devin is beginning to pose odd questions regarding our background." I rose and headed to the kitchen, requiring a brief pause to absorb it all. Jasmine had brought in a skilled investigator and yet failed to link me to E.J. Beaumont. This indicated my safeguards had succeeded, though it also suggested she wouldn't back down without a fight. As I came back bearing additional tea, I spotted her perusing the volumes on my bookshelf, those worn finance tomes I'd gathered over many years. "What's the reason for all these investment guides?" she questioned, lifting a market breakdown guide I'd snagged for $1 at a yard sale. "When did you start caring about financial matters?" Her manner turned probing, almost as if she'd uncovered proof of wrongdoing. "I purchase them since they're inexpensive, and I enjoy flipping through them." I fibbed a bit. Moreover, after countless years of overhearing corporate discussions during janitorial duties, I'd sparked an interest in the inner workings of businesses. That part rang true, though it wasn't the full story. Jasmine set the volume aside and faced me with pleading eyes. "Mom, if you've got funds tucked away, if you've stashed even a portion of savings, please share it with me. Devin and I are facing money troubles." This marked the initial occasion she'd brought up monetary woes, presenting an ideal chance for me to gather details. "What sort of issues?" I inquired, infused with authentic parental worry. Jasmine sank into the couch, at last unveiling the reality she'd concealed beneath her flawless exterior. Mr. Sterling's firm was in far graver shape than they'd disclosed prior to the marriage. Despite the transaction, massive individual liabilities remain. The residence we occupy is encumbered by a full mortgage. The vehicles, the gems, all of it was acquired via loans, assuming the enterprise would continue producing revenue. There lay the admission I'd anticipated. "How much is owed?" I probed softly. Jasmine shielded her face with her palms. $200,000. $200,000 across credit lines. $300,000. $300,000 for the home loan. $100,000. $100,000 through private borrowings, and that excludes the matrimonial costs, which we charged completely, believing repayment could wait. $600,000. $600,000 indebted. A sum that meant little to me, yet spelled complete devastation for them. "And what's your strategy moving forward?" I wondered, despite sensing the direction of this exchange. Mr. Sterling is pursuing alternative employment, but given his years, it's challenging. Devon is searching as well, though his background is entirely linked to the kin enterprise, and She faltered, nibbling her bottom lip in that childhood habit when she'd misbehaved. I figured perhaps if you've truly concealed assets, you might assist us, not freely, but via a lend. We'd repay you, plus some return. This was the instant I'd awaited for weeks. Jasmine had ultimately shown her hand. She faced a fiscal meltdown and viewed me as her sole escape route. Rather than affirming or refuting her hunch about my riches, I opted to offer her something far riskier, a blend of optimism and doubt. "Jasmine," I uttered deliberately, "if I possess such resources, do you honestly believe you'd be pleading with me now after labeling me a fat sow in front of 200 guests? My tone stayed gentle, yet it bore the burden of long-endured insults. Do you truly imagine a wealthy individual would have quietly endured the contempt you've heaped on me for years?" I observed my statement strike her like blows. Jasmine started sobbing openly, tears blending remorse with monetary dread. "I'm sorry, Mom, so very sorry for how I behaved toward you. But at this moment, you're the sole soul on earth I can rely on. If you hold any funds, anything lendable, I promise we'll return every cent." I settled next to her and clasped her hands, sensing their quiver against mine. "Allow me to pose a query, Jasmine. If I truly were a millionaire, if I were indeed a Beaumont, how would you respond? What shift would that bring to your existence?" Her gaze sparked with a perilous fusion of ease and avarice. "It would allow us to rescue our dwelling, our union, our prospects. It would spare me the terror of forfeiting it all." She halted, meeting my stare squarely. "Yet it would also signify I've been the most appalling child imaginable, scorning the one who genuinely cares for me." It qualified as a solid reply, but I recognized Jasmine's skill at voicing what others desired. The true puzzle remained. How would she act upon learning the facts? Would she cherish me for my wealth or pardon me in spite of it? Jasmine's weeping subsided rapidly as she noted my lack of swift reply to her musings on the hypothetical millionaire scenario. I saw her dab her eyes with her hands rear, shifting from raw openness to a more deliberate demeanor. "Mom," she stated more resolutely, "I require a straightforward reply from you. Are you E.J. Beaumont or not?" I rose from the couch and approached the window overlooking the pothole-riddled road lined with shattered lamps. "Jasmine, suppose for a second that the answer is yes. Picture how, all those years you felt embarrassed by me, I was actually constructing a vast fortune worth millions." I turned to face her. "How would that reflect on your character?" Her expression grew pale. "It would make me a monster," she murmured. "It would show I loathe the one individual who gave up everything for me." Yet suddenly, like a light switching on in her mind, her gaze turned steely. "But it would also prove you deceived me for years, that you allowed me to feel superior, while in truth, I was the one with nothing. There was the familiar Jasmine. Rather than owning up to her harshness, she was already shifting blame to play the sufferer. So I replied steadily, "Would you rather I really was destitute? Would it ease your mind to realize your barbs and degradations truly wounded someone powerless to fight back?" Jasmine went quiet for an extended pause, grappling with the dilemma I'd crafted for her. At last, she responded in a faint tone. "I simply need to grasp why Mr. Sterling knew you. I just want to find out if there's any chance we can escape this money mess." It was moment to escalate the charade. I headed to my bedroom and came back carrying a worn-out shoebox. I set it down on the table, separating us. "I've kept this hidden from you," I stated, lifting the lid gradually. It contained faded records, snapshots, and a few sheets I'd readied just for now. I drew out a snapshot from 15 years back, showing me exiting a sleek office tower. I wore simple attire, yet the opulent structure loomed plainly in the background. A colleague had snapped this. I fabricated the tale. On that occasion, I was actually scrubbing the floors at Beaumont International Corporation. I observed Jasmine's stare lock onto the company's label in the image. "Beaumont," she breathed, grasping the picture with shaky fingers. "You toiled for a Beaumont firm." Her thoughts raced, linking clues I'd deliberately sown. I extracted another item, a 12-year-old stub for janitorial work, where I'd edited the client's title to say Beaumont Enterprise. "I labored there for years," I continued, then halted for effect, "until circumstances forced me to leave." Jasmine examined the invoice like a puzzle key. Circumstances. Her words came out soft. "What sort of issues would push you to abandon steady employment?" This formed the trickiest segment of my scheme. I had to embed a believable kernel of reality to tie it all together, yet keep it ambiguous to sustain the intrigue. There were discrepancies in the firm, matters I glimpsed while tidying rooms after dark, talks I caught snippets of. I slumped into a seat, feigning distress from the recollection. Eventually, the head executive requested I linger late for a confidential discussion. Jasmine's eyes grew wide. "He wanted you to observe something." Her mind was supplying details just as I'd anticipated. "I can't discuss it," I replied, simulating unease. I inked a confidentiality clause, but suffice to say, there are motives for concealing my role. I returned the papers to the container, seeing how Jasmine tracked each motion with eager intensity. "Mom," she pressed eagerly, "are you saying you hold a secret on E.J. Beaumont? That perhaps you served under him personally?" She inched closer. "Is that the reason Mr. Sterling spotted you? Because you attended key sessions?" I offered no straight reply, but my quiet spoke volumes. I saw Jasmine weave her narrative, that I'd seen a major event, that E.J. Beaumont had paid me off in some way, that extortion might even factor in. Her version was utterly off base, but plausible enough to account for the baffling pieces. "Did you pocket cash from back then?" She probed outright. "Did they offer payoff for your discretion?" Her gaze gleamed with blended optimism and a shadow of greed, the notion her mom might be a crafty blackmailer. "Jasmine," I declared resolutely, "those events in my past are intricate. Influential figures are tangled in it, binding contracts I won't violate, and fallout that could impact beyond just our family." I rose and started stowing the box. "But if your money troubles are dire, perhaps I could assist somehow." Jasmine sprang from the couch like she'd been zapped. "What sort of assistance?" Her tone pitched up, frantic. "Do you control funds? Could you arrange a loan? Do you have contacts to bail us out?" I met her stare squarely. "I could place a few calls. Folks from that era owe me debts, but I'd require details on the exact sum and purpose." It was an imprecise offer, but potent array of options, crafted to keep Jasmine hanging in suspense as I pondered my following step. $600,000. $600,000, she replied without hesitation. "That's the sum we require to clear every debt and rebuild our lives." Her fingers shook while she talked. "We're open to paying interest, offering security, or doing anything required." That's quite a substantial figure, I remarked, musing over it. I'd need to reach out to key contacts who value their anonymity. I hesitated. And I'd have to ensure you grasp the gravity of the lengths I'm prepared to go. Jasmine bobbed her head emphatically. We get it. We're committed. This isn't some fleeting notion, Mom. It's our entire existence. Yet suddenly, as though a fresh thought struck her, she eyed me warily. But what exactly would you need to undertake in exchange? What sort of obligations would you incur? It was a sharp inquiry, revealing how Jasmine was starting to realize that resolving her money woes could carry unforeseen costs. That, I responded enigmatically, hinges on the extent of the risks you're ready to take to protect your prospects. With that, I departed, leaving my daughter gripped by torturous suspense, aware she'd devote the coming days to envisioning a spectrum of outcomes, thrilling and dreadful alike, regarding what I might do on her behalf. Over the subsequent 3 days, Jasmine rang me every couple of hours. Her voicemails shifted from frantic thanks to sheer worry, then veered into near mania. Have you reached out to them yet, Mom? Any updates soon? Should Devin and I attend some kind of discussion? Each message carried a growing edge to her tone, and I sensed the strain seeping into her relationship, with Devin probing her relentlessly about the situation. Come Friday evening, I resolved to advance my strategy. I phoned Jasmine and shared that I had developments. I want you and Devin over at my place tomorrow at 7 hours sharp. And Jasmine, I lingered for effect. See to it that nobody else learns of this gathering, particularly Devin's relatives. When they showed up Saturday, Jasmine sported a sleek black gown like she was prepping for a significant event. Devin appeared jittery, fiddling with his necktie over and over and scanning my simple living space with a blend of interest and unease. Evidently, Jasmine had shared some details, but held back the full picture. Prior to diving in, I announced while pouring drinks into my worn cups, "There's a crucial point you both must comprehend. What we'll discuss this evening stays confined to this room. Influential figures are at play, and your monetary prospects ride on your discretion." Devin coughed lightly. "Ms. Baines, Jasmine mentioned you have connections who might assist with our fiscal troubles. We're truly grateful for whatever support you offer, but we don't wish to drag you into any peril on our account. Such a kind, straightforward fellow." His sincere worry for my safety stood in stark opposition to the thinly veiled avarice flickering in Jasmine's gaze. "Devin," I murmured gently, "how much has Jasmine shared about my professional history?" He glanced uneasily at his spouse. "She mentioned you were employed at a major firm long ago and that you might have ties to folks who could secure us financing." It amounted to a sanitized take on reality, and I noted how Jasmine had guarded against disclosing her more outlandish guesses about who I really was. "The reality runs deeper than that," I stated, rising to draw the shades in my flat. The move was for show alone, yet I observed them both stiffen. For many years, I'd handled janitorial duties at one of the nation's top corporations, but my duties extended beyond mere tidying. They involved watching, eavesdropping, relaying information. Jasmine edged closer, her gaze alight. Relaying what? To who? She breathed the words, as if we'd reached the core of the enigma plaguing her for weeks. Fiscal discrepancies, confidential talks, sessions that never officially took place. I held back, allowing the drama to swell. My immediate superior wasn't the maintenance chief. It was Beaumont herself. The ensuing quiet hung heavy enough to slice through. Devin stared blankly, evidently missing the ramifications. Jasmine, however, paled dramatically. "Are you telling me you served under E.J. Beaumont directly?" Her words cracked on the final syllable. "For over 15 years, I affirmed, noting her fingers start to quiver. "Officially, I managed overnight maintenance. Unofficially, I functioned as her lookout in a sector rife with deceit and scams. It formed a meticulously woven fabrication, laced with just enough veracity to ring true. Devin hadn't quite pieced it together yet. "Ms. Baines, does that mean you acted as a sort of undercover operative?" His naivety proved endearing, clashing with Jasmine's rapid mental tallying of the revelation's fallout. It surpassed that, I continued, opting to deliver to Jasmine precisely the disclosure she'd craved all along. Throughout those years, E.J. Beaumont rewarded me. I had set aside a substantial sum at my own judgment. Upon leaving that position, I ensured I possessed sufficient assets to sustain a secure existence through my remaining years. Jasmine nearly sprang from her chair. "How much exactly?" she demanded outright. "What's the total amount of your wealth?" The facade of daughterly affection had vanished entirely, supplanted by raw greed that pained me to witness, despite my anticipation of it. "Sufficient," I responded evenly, "to alleviate your monetary woes multiple times. Yet the real issue isn't the extent of my holdings. It's what you're prepared to undertake to obtain it." Devon appeared more and more uneasy. "Miss Baines, we aren't seeking your funds as charity. We're ready to labor, to cover interest, to offer security. We simply require assistance to navigate this challenging period." But Jasmine had already abandoned politeness and decorum. "What sorts of actions would be required?" she inquired point blank. "What do you expect in return for the funds?" Her gaze gleamed with a blend of frantic optimism and a more sinister undercurrent, the readiness to stoop to nearly any measure to escape her predicament. This marked the ideal juncture for the ultimate evaluation. For months, I had subtly woven seeds of uncertainty and distrust, crafting a storyline that accounted for the puzzling aspects of my existence. Now came the revelation of my daughter's authentic character amid the prospect of economic rescue. "Jasmine," I uttered deliberately, "for years you've regarded me as non-existent. You've demeaned me, shamed me, and derided me openly. Just last week, you labeled me a fat sow before an audience of 200. I observed her recoil from my statement, but now, sensing my affluence, I abruptly become the paramount maternal figure imaginable. Her face reddened. "Mom, I'm deeply remorseful for my past conduct toward you. If time travel were possible, I'd alter every instance. Please don't allow my previous errors to jeopardize what lies ahead for us." "Our future," I echoed, arching a brow, "or rather, your fiscal prospects." The nuance mattered greatly, and I intended for them both to grasp precisely the gravity at hand. Devon stepped in, evidently detecting the strain between Jasmine and myself. "Ms. Baines, I realize Jasmine hasn't consistently been the most considerate child, but she's endured considerable pressure of late. Our economic troubles have been crushing, and that might explain her actions." It was a kind yet innocent plea. Devon failed to recognize that Jasmine's harsh treatment of me predated their fiscal difficulties by years. "Devon," I replied softly, "I value your support for your spouse, but I must clarify one point. Should I extend financial aid, I require assurances that my benevolence won't be misconstrued or exploited." Jasmine edged closer, her stare alight with eagerness. "What assurances do you mean? We'll go to any lengths. We'll endorse any paperwork. We'll agree to any stipulation." Her eagerness to embrace unspecified obligations without probing further revealed her mindset completely. "All right then," I stated, rising to retrieve papers from the desk where I'd readied them for precisely this occasion. "I've drafted an offer that could eradicate your monetary issues entirely. However, prior to unveiling it, I must confirm, are you amenable to lasting shifts in your dynamic with me?" "What manner of shifts?" Devon queried warily, yet Jasmine was already assenting without awaiting elaboration. "The sort of shifts," I continued, approaching with a dossier in hand, "that will reveal if you genuinely prioritize kinship above currency, or if wealth alone prompts you to cherish relations." With that, I set the dossier down, aware that its contents would irrevocably alter our bonds, for better or worse. I unfastened the dossier gradually, exposing papers I'd painstakingly assembled in recent weeks. The top sheet bore an air of full legitimacy, complete with simulated official seals and endorsements. Titled Conditional Financial Transfer Agreement, it was backdated by merely 3 days. This, I announced, sliding it toward them, is an arrangement I've been discussing with my associates since our previous exchange. Jasmine seized the page eagerly, like a predator claiming its quarry, her eyes darting across the text as Devin peered alongside her, his features growing more anxious by the moment. The terms outlined within specified a disbursement of $800,000 to settle all outstanding liabilities, plus an additional $200,000 for moving costs, in return for stipulations crafted to probe their true natures. Initial stipulation, Jasmine recited audibly, her tone quivering faintly, full conveyance of all existing personal holdings as security. She met my gaze. That would entail deeding the residence, vehicles, everything under your ownership. Provisionally, I clarified, scrutinizing their responses. Merely until you prove capable of handling a substantial sum like that comes with typical safeguards for deals of this nature. Devin knitted his brows. Miss Baines, that would make us entirely reliant on your kindness. What if misfortune strikes you? What assurances do we really have? It was a sharp observation, revealing that Devin, in contrast to Jasmine, was considering more than just the short-term fix. Second stipulation, Jasmine pressed on, brushing aside her spouse's worry. Prompt move to whatever town I select, with restricted family interactions over a 5-year trial phase. The quiet that ensued rang heavy in the air. Devin went pale right before my eyes. Restricted family interactions. What does that entail precisely? His tone had shed its typical politeness, now laced with real distress. It entails, I responded evenly, that over those 5 years, you'd reside in a location of my picking, in a dwelling I'd supply, supported by a monthly allowance I'd set. Visits from relatives would be confined to vetted events, and any dealings with me would route through third parties. Jasmine was hastily scanning the remaining pages of the agreement. Third stipulation, willful surrender of any forthcoming inheritance claims. Her words faltered a bit on that clause. So you're telling us that taking this cash means forfeiting whatever legacy you might pass on? Precisely, I affirmed. This would mark your sole monetary gain from our kinship. Beyond it, you'd stand on your own financially, and I'd have no further duties toward you. Devin rose suddenly from the couch, his cheeks burning with outrage. Ms. Baines, if I may say so respectfully, this isn't a gift or kin support. It's more like purchasing our autonomy. His delivery quivered with feeling. You're dangling funds in return for basically severing all familial bonds. Yet Jasmine kept poring over the papers with eager focus. What would the monthly allowance amount to? She inquired, overlooking her husband's objection entirely. And what sort of home would you arrange? Their contrasting responses matched what I'd anticipated and dreaded. Devin recognized the offer as the harsh trial it truly was, masked by apparent benevolence. Jasmine fixated solely on the figures and the economic upsides. The allowance would come to $4,000. $4,000 per month, I answered, noting how Jasmine's gaze gleamed with avarice. The residence would be unpretentious yet cozy, situated in a modest town with affordable living expenses. It would afford a decent existence, but nothing lavish. Jasmine, Devin addressed his partner, his expression one of utter astonishment. Are you seriously entertaining this? Debating funds for abandoning ties with your own mom? He raked his fingers through his locks, obviously fighting to stay even-keeled. This doesn't feel proper. The entire scenario strikes me as off. At last, Jasmine lifted her eyes from the file. Devin, hear me out. We're on the brink of forfeiting it all. The property, the vehicles, our standing, our prospects. My mom is extending a lifeline. Her gaze sparkled with a frantic urgency that tugged at my emotions. 5 years isn't an eternity. We could grab the payout, establish ourselves elsewhere, craft a fresh start, and once those 5 years pass, Devin countered, his tone heavy with sorrow, we'd return as outsiders. Your mom turns into a faded acquaintance. Any kids we have would mature unaware of their grandma. His inquiries sliced through the tension like knives, laying bare the real risks involved. I rose and approached the pain, affording them room to debate while remaining near enough to catch every exchange. This was the exchange I'd anticipated, the instant when their core principles would emerge amid intense strain. Devin, Jasmine murmured more gently, the bond with my mom is shattered already. Just last week I labeled her a bloated cow out loud. Long before, I'd acted like she didn't exist. Perhaps this is my due. Perhaps I need to atone for my errors. Don't speak that way, Devin burst out. Old wrongs can mend. Bonds can mend. But your mom's plan isn't mending, it's excision. He faced me. Ms. Baines, I get that Jasmine wounded you profoundly. Yet this isn't equity. It's retaliation. His statement struck deeper than I'd braced for. Devin had pinpointed what I'd refused to admit. Part of my offer stemmed from spite, not affection. Devin, I uttered quietly, pivoting to regard them. What alternative do you propose? Hand over the funds without strings. Permit Jasmine to keep viewing me as a cash dispenser. I propose, Devin stated resolutely, that we seek reconciliation between you two, absent any fiscal elements. I propose Jasmine strives for your pardon via deeds, not monetary exchanges. Jasmine shot to her feet, the papers shaking in her grip. Simple for you to claim. You're not facing total ruin. Tears of anger welled in her eyes. You can't grasp the burden of bearing the disgrace from openly degrading the sole individual, someone who genuinely cares for you. Her tone faltered. With this pact, at least, we might begin anew. We could construct something genuine. Construct what? Devin inquired urgently. An existence rooted in cash, tainted by the fallout from a shattered family bond. He faced me once more. Ms. Baines, you've always shown sharpness and achievement throughout your days. Certainly, you recognize this path leads to turmoil for everybody. It marked a pivotal instant. I had the option to uphold my pretense and allow them to decide, aware that Jasmine would likely agree to the clauses and Devin could potentially abandon her over them. Alternatively, I might seize this opportunity to disclose my actual identity and the motives behind engineering this intricate trial. There's one more stipulation, I declared at last, absent from the paperwork. They both gazed at me with strained anticipation. Prior to endorsing anything or reaching a conclusion, I must reveal the full reality of my true self. Jasmine dropped the papers onto the surface. What reality? There's additional information. Her words emerged as a faint murmur, as though she suddenly grasped she'd been part of a contest with unfamiliar guidelines. The reality, I explained, moving to my workspace to retrieve another file, is that I require no exclusive links to access those funds. The reality is that the agreement you examined is entirely fabricated. I came back bearing the authentic dossier, the one holding papers that would validate my genuine persona. And yes, Jasmine, I am precisely the individual Mr. Sterling identified during your ceremony. The ensuing quiet was profound enough to catch the steady rhythm of the antique timepiece on the wall in the kitchen. Jasmine and Devin stared at me like I'd just confessed to being from outer space. And in some sense, I imagine, to them, E.J. Beaumont could have hailed from a distant world. Over the past 3 decades, I went on, unveiling the legitimate file. I've established a corporate dynasty worth exceeding $200 million, $200,000. And throughout, you've resided within a short drive, less than 3 miles, from one of the wealthiest females in the nation. The file I revealed held genuine records now, authentic financial summaries bearing my actual title. business possession papers, merger deals bearing my personal endorsement, and snapshots from executive gatherings where I appeared unmistakably as E.J. Beaumont. Jasmine grasped the initial sheet with fingers quivering uncontrollably, hardly able to grip it. Savings account. Eleanor Elelanina Baines Beaumont. She recited softly, her utterance a mere breath. Existing funds. The sheet tumbled from her grasp like it burned. This is authentic. Devon bent forward to inspect it personally, his complexion ashen like candle drippings. Miss Beaumont, he amended, evidently wrestling with the revelation. You truly are. He trailed off, unable to complete the thought. I am indeed the person Mr. Sterling spotted at your nuptials, I affirmed, laying out further records across the table. Here are the acquisition deeds for his kin's enterprise. This bears my mark. These represent the wire transfers totaling $45 million. Each item I positioned acted as an explosive truth in their thoughts. Jasmine sank into the couch, her gaze flitting wildly among the sheets, unable to settle. But you dwell in this dreadful flat. You don in second-hand outfits. You rely on city transit. Her timbre fractured. Why? Why endure such simplicity with all this wealth? It was the inquiry I'd anticipated for ages. Because, I replied, settling opposite her, following your father's passing, I resolved to shield myself from fragility forever. I vowed to forge a stronghold so unassailable that nobody, not even my daughter, could wound me economically. I halted, allowing the statement to resonate, yet I also chose a modest existence to ensure I never overlooked life's core values. Devon kept poring over the records, his features reflecting mounting wonder. Ms. Beaumont, these firms. I've encountered mentions of these firms. You control the dining franchise that rescued my relative from ruin. You're the buyer behind the fabric mill employing my relative. His tone carried fresh admiration. You've preserved livelihoods throughout the urban area for ages. Not solely here, I added quietly. Across 12 nations, I've taken over struggling outfits, revamped them, and transformed them into thriving ventures supporting over 50,000 workers. It was my initial discussion of my actual endeavors with family, and it brought an odd sense of release. Jasmine at last raised her eyes from the papers, rivulets tracing her face. 3 decades, she whispered. For 3 decades, you've observed me scorn you, belittle you, act as if you didn't exist. And throughout it all, her words shattered utterly. Throughout, you've outshone every success I've encountered. Outshone, I amended softly, yet evidently fallen short as a parent. The admission stung, but it demanded utterance. Devon slumped into a seat, his hands pressing. He buried his face in his palms. Oh heavens, Miss Beaumont. Considering all the nasty comments Jasmine made about you to my relatives, the fabricated reasons she cooked up for excluding you from our gatherings. He pulled his hands away, gazing at me with remorse-filled eyes. We were so quick to condemn you. We viewed you as a drag on Jasmine. You didn't condemn me, I replied steadily. I crafted this persona myself. I opted to conceal my actual background. The version of me you encountered was precisely the one I intended. I pulled out another paper from the file, yet it also implies that each degradation, each slight, every instance where I was demeaned as subhuman stemmed from decisions Jasmine made freely, without any outside influence. Jasmine bent forward, weeping hysterically. I'm sorry, she kept murmuring amid her sobs. I'm truly deeply sorry. I can't even begin to express my regret. Nothing can reverse the harm I've inflicted. You're correct, I responded evenly. There's no reversing it, though paths exist to progress. I rose and approached the desk again, coming back with a fresh document. This is my authentic will, Jasmine. Care to hear its contents? Her gaze expanded in dread. Mom, regardless of what's in it, I merit being written out. I warrant you severing all ties with me forever. It states, I went on, brushing aside her objections, that after my passing, 70% of my estate will benefit charitable organizations I've quietly supported for years, refuges for women facing abuse, learning initiatives for kids from laboring households, grants for budding business starters. I halted. The other 30% was meant for you and your eventual offspring. Was, Devon observed right away, catching the shift to past. Not anymore, I declared, fixing my stare on Jasmine. Following the embarrassment at your wedding, I composed a revised will. Now the full 100% directs to charity. I observed the impact of those words strike her like a tangible blow, as I grasped that bequeathing you funds posthumously would merely reinforce your conviction that wealth trumps bonds. Jasmine rose unsteadily, her knees scarcely holding her weight. "It's fine," she murmured. "Utterly fine. You possess full justification to exclude me from your inheritance. But please," her tone cracked, "please don't exclude me from your life while you're still here. The money means nothing to me now. I simply crave the opportunity to truly act as your daughter." "A true daughter," I echoed, arching a brow. "Oh, the kind of true daughter who presented me as a plump slut a fortnight past." Devon moved closer to Jasmine, enveloping her in his embrace as she sobbed. "Miss Beaumont," he stated in a resolute yet courteous manner, "I grasp your hurt and your fury. Jasmine treated you abominably, and no justifications exist for her conduct. But she remains your child and you her parent. Surely a path exists to mend this bond." "Does one?" I queried sincerely. "How does one mend a connection when one side has devoted decades to showing that love, based on conditions, is all they comprehend?" Jasmine disentangled from Devon and advanced toward me, dropping to her knees before my seat. "Mom, I realize I lack any claim to request favors from you. I know I've acted monstrously toward you for years, but if you grant me a single opportunity, I vow to dedicate my remaining days to demonstrating my genuine self to you and your monetary troubles," I inquired. "Do you still anticipate my aid in clearing your obligations?" Devon and Jasmine exchanged glances, and I detected a wordless exchange between them. At last, Devon voiced it. "Miss Beaumont, we'll handle our fiscal issues on our own. We'll liquidate all our possessions. We'll relocate to a modest flat. We'll take whatever employment comes our way. We seek none of your funds." "He's correct," affirmed this transformed Jasmine, the one freshly aware she'd been scorning one of the nation's most influential figures. "It's no longer about cash, Mom. It's solely about if forgiveness is possible from you." This was the instant I'd awaited across years. Yet upon its arrival, I sensed not triumph, but weariness beyond what I'd foreseen. "Jasmine," I uttered gently, "forgiveness isn't gained in a single exchange. It's constructed via steady deeds across extended periods." "Then guide me on what steps to take," she implored. "Instruct me on beginning." "You begin," I instructed, assisting her to stand from the ground. "By openly confessing your actions at the wedding. You begin by offering amends to everyone there during my public shaming. And you begin by showing me dignity, not due to your recent discovery of my wealth, but because I'm your parent and merited dignity always." Jasmine bobbed her head emphatically. "I'll handle that. I'll manage all of it and beyond." "And I added, gathering the papers and restoring them to the folder. "I require time to determine if I genuinely trust your capacity for transformation, or if this is merely another act to secure your desires. In truth, after years of concealing myself behind a fabricated facade, I remained uncertain of my own authentic nature. No longer did I feel divided between Eleanor, the unseen figure, or Beaumont, the cutthroat executive. Until I figured it out, I couldn't decide on the path forward with Jasmine. That pivotal night 6 months earlier had shifted everything. There, I stood before the mirror in my fresh, downtown penthouse, a sophisticated space that truly matched my wealth. Gone were the days of secondhand outfits or multiple bus rides to the office. My hairstyle came from a skilled stylist. I sported subtle yet refined accessories, and my wardrobe featured high-end labels. After 3 decades, Eleanor Baines and E.J. Beaumont had merged into one identity. The shift proved tougher than anticipated. For years, my fabricated scarcity had served as protection, shielding my authentic existence from those chasing wealth. Embracing my achievements publicly now meant dealing with an entirely new landscape of connections and kin obligations. Jasmine honored her promise in surprising ways. Just a week post-confession, she arranged a gathering for Devon's whole clan, Mr. Sterling included, plus 200 top wedding invitees. During that meal, amid those who'd seen my embarrassment, Jasmine rose and delivered a handwritten statement of regret. 6 months back, she began, her tone shaky yet firm, I shamed the key woman in my world right here. I labeled my mom overweight in front of you all, chuckling like her hurt was a show. Her statement sliced through the upscale dining spot's atmosphere. The part you missed, and I did too, was that my mother ranks among the nation's top entrepreneurs. Yet that's not why my actions can't be excused. The real issue is she's my parent, and I picked meanness instead of compassion. It ranked as one of the boldest, most grounding scenes I'd ever seen. Tears streamed down Jasmine's face as she spoke, but she powered through to the end. Mr. Sterling teared up as well, expressing sorrow for his laughter that evening. The mood around the table transformed noticeably, from mocking glee to shared remorse, though those open admissions marked just the start. Jasmine and Devon offloaded their posh home, fancy vehicles, and pricey belongings. They relocated to a modest 2-bedroom in a blue-collar area, landing entry-level positions. Jasmine handling front desk duties at a health center, Devon starting as a basic bookkeeper in a tiny agency. Initially, they turned down all my monetary support offers. When I suggested clearing their loans, Devon replied resolutely, Miss Beaumont, we must demonstrate to ourselves and you that responsibility doesn't rely on your funds. On her initial visit to my towering 40-floor corporate base, which left her breathless, Jasmine requested solely this: teach me the steps behind your success. Not cash from you, I aim to forge my path. That's how the oddest chapter unfolded, guiding my 34-year-old child toward responsible maturity. Our regular midday sessions evolved from awkward encounters in impartial cafes to warmer spots at intimate eateries where Jasmine posed queries that pierced me deeply. What guided your stock choices? How do you decide on deals without letting feelings interfere? How did you sustain focus over time despite delayed payoffs? The hardest hit came from seeing how Jasmine lacked those abilities because I'd never shared them. In her early years, absorbed in crafting my hidden fortune, I'd neglected her lessons in finance and feelings, leaving them to fate. Essentially, her focus on luxury and harshness stemmed from a rearing where funds seemed enigmatic and enchanted, vanishing or emerging inexplicably. The turning point arrived 4 months post-reveal. Jasmine showed up to lunch displaying an unfamiliar spark in her gaze, real self-assurance untied to belongings. "Mom," she beamed, evoking her childhood grin. Devon and I covered every expense this month without cards. First occasion in my grown-up years. Objectively minor, yet for her it signaled a core shift. Then she added, "We've got news." Devon, now a frequent caller with a sincere bond toward me, clasped her fingers. "We're having a child." The announcement struck like thunder. Grandmotherhood awaited. Following ages of accepting isolation in later life, family loomed real and close. "Your intentions?" I inquired, fighting to steady my words. "We'll nurture her uniquely," Jasmine responded at once. "She'll know her grandma from birth. We want her to grasp the importance of diligence and modesty, and we hope she'll realize that familial affection knows no bounds." That's when I finally committed. I delayed it for months on end. "I have something important to share," I told her, reaching into my bag for the paperwork I'd kept close for weeks. I've given a lot of thought to what's ahead, to how I want to handle my wealth." Jasmine stiffened right away. "Mom, if this is regarding the estate, we've made it clear we don't want your funds." "This isn't about the estate," I replied gently. "It's about something far more meaningful." I set the paper down on the table. It's the founding document for the Bain Sterling Family Foundation. I've chosen to transform half my assets into a non-profit entity managed by future generations of our kin. Devin examined the details intently. "What does that entail precisely?" "It entails," I clarified, "that once my grandchild, boy or girl, reaches adulthood, they'll gain lessons in fiscal stewardship by directing funds toward aiding those in need. It allows Jasmine to pursue a path in charitable work if that's her calling, and it ensures that none of you will inherit vast riches, yet you'll always possess the chance to impact the world positively." Tears welled up in Jasmine's eyes again, but now they stemmed from appreciation rather than distress. "It's ideal," she murmured. "Just what our little one requires, meaning without entitlement, possibilities without shortcuts." In the ensuing months, we collaborated on shaping the Foundation's initiatives. Jasmine revealed an innate gift for spotting local challenges and crafting effective remedies. Devin brought his expertise in budgeting, which meshed seamlessly with her enthusiasm. For the first time in years, I sensed I truly belonged to a family. Not flawless, but authentic. When my granddaughter, Aaliyah Beaumont Sterling, entered the world, I cradled that small bundle and vowed quietly. From the start, she'd know her grandma inside out, both Eleanor Baines and E.J. Beaumont. No hidden truths, no fabricated personas, no embarrassment over achievements or modesty. Reflecting on that awful evening at Jasmine's wedding, when she labeled me a fat SA before 200 guests, I now recognize it as the spark for a change that pain alone could ignite. Jasmine needed to reach her lowest point to appreciate life's essentials. I had to face the prospect of utter isolation to uncover what I'd truly battled to retain. The query I pose to myself these days, gazing ahead with optimism I haven't known in ages, is this: and you, within your households and personal journeys, have you mustered the bravery to reveal your true selves entirely? Or do you persist in concealing aspects due to apprehension, safeguarding, or arrogance? The lesson I absorbed, despite its sting, reveals that genuine affection can't thrive amid core deceptions. Ultimately, authentic bonds, not wealth, are what bind us when all else crumbles. Enjoyed my tale? And from which town are you tuning in? Share in the comments below. If the story resonated, show your backing with a super thanks so I can continue delivering tales like this. Grateful for your kind encouragement. Eager for your thoughts on the narrative. Check the screen for 2 fresh personal accounts I strongly suggest. My channel has plenty more to offer. Hit subscribe if you haven't. Catch you in the upcoming story. Warm regards and appreciation.